when it's up. Good morning. Thanks for joining me on the live this morning. I think we're a minute or two early, so we're going to give everybody a chance to start to tune in. We're going to talk about softness and collection today. And I think that's a collection, especially a lot of people have trouble grasping the concept of. And we'll talk about it, and I'll take your questions, and we'll go from there. Um, we're supposed to have some cold weather move in, I believe, starting tomorrow night. They're forecasting ice and snow and a lot of really bad weather north of me. It's not supposed to get down to me. I think Saturday evening it's supposed to start to turn cold, and then Sunday evening it's supposed to be even a little colder. But thankfully, all the ice and stuff is supposed to stay north of me. We're not. I don't think we're supposed to drop below freezing until after it's all passed and cleared out. Um, just kind of the where I am on the Gulf, we get a lot of uh, wind blowing off of the water, and that generally keeps our temperatures up a little higher than either east or west of me. And it's kind of nice. That's why the snow that we got last year was so unusual. That was actually a year ago yesterday, I believe, that we got all that snow. That was only the second time in my lifetime that we got snow here. And but we're not supposed to get any of that. I think most of what's going to come through here is going to be a lot of ice, and it's going to stay north of me, not going to affect us at all. So actually, see, I'm short sleeve. It's actually really humid. I think we're close to 70 degrees, maybe upper 60s, and very humid, very sticky today. And that's why it's hard for us to blanket. So we're here close to 70 right now, very humid, and you sweat just standing here. And sometimes we're like this today, and then it's going to drop down into the 40s to the following night, and it's just impossible for us to really do a good job of putting blankets on, taking blankets off, and so it's really hard in this part of the country to do that. Further north, different places where it gets cold and stays cold, it's a lot easier. But it's pretty. I had on a hoodie yesterday and my heated vest, and today I'm in short sleeves. So it's kind of how our weather works. So what I'm used to. I kind of like it that way. Now we get a lot of heat in the summer. It gets real hot in the summer with humidity. So a lot of people struggle with that. Some horses struggle with it, but like anything else, you kind of adapt to what you're used to. So put in the comments where you're watching from, and I'd love to hear. And I think a lot of the country is getting this really cold weather that's coming in, and it's going to affect a lot of the country. Um, Thankfully, not here. I'm on Hammer here, and we'll talk a good bit about him as the video goes on. I, I, I recorded several videos of him. I think I just realized this morning I've only actually put one video out of him. And so I'm a couple of weeks behind putting videos out. And the next two videos you're going to see of him is actually recorded before today. So you're going to see how he kind of progressed from where he was when he came in to me getting him and what you see today. I believe he's 5 now, if I remember right. And he was with a NRHA level 4 upper level trainer during his 2-year-old and his 3-year-old year. And the plan was for him to be a NRHA futurity horse. During his 2-year-old year, the trainer said he was progressing good, doing everything that he was supposed to be doing. But during his 3-year-old year, the owner doesn't think he really got all of his riding time during the year. And then getting close to the futurity, she thinks he kind of pushed on him hard, overdid it a little bit, and he kind of got mad at the world. And he was shown marked, I believe she said a 212, which is a pretty good score. But he was mad. She said he would act up when she got on him. Really, she couldn't get him through a pattern. The trainer could get him through a pattern, but she couldn't. And just kind of generally mad at the world. And That's not good for a horse to be that way. They're not going to last that way. And she sent him to me. He's had like 2 years off, just being home, just being a horse. And then she sent him to me to kind of slowly put him back in training, slowly bring him along. And her goals are to eventually show him NRHA. I believe she said she's a rookie level rider. So he would be doing weekend shows, pushed a little bit, not terribly hard. Let's get your head over to the left. Not terribly hard, but she would like for him to have just a long-term upper mid-level show career. No, nothing featured, nothing aged events, nothing like that. So I've been working with him for a couple of weeks, and he's actually come around really nice. She's done a really good job of just letting him decompress at home, and he's starting to do some really nice things. There's some things that I'm going to need to kind of work on, tune up, and I kind of talk about that throughout the other videos that I've done with him. Today, I want to talk about Softness and Collection, and he is a very soft horse. Collects up really nice. I have to kind of remind him once in a while because he's pretty unfit, because the last 2 years he basically was just at home decompressing being a horse. Right there, he wants to make sure there's no food in that bucket. But overall, he knows how to be soft. He knows what collection is, and there's so much confusion about collection. I listened to a podcast this morning on my way in. Normally, I don't even decide what I'm going to talk about into these lives until like 30 minutes before. And then I say, oh, I think this is a good topic. Well, this morning, I was driving in listening to a podcast about collection, and it started off just totally wrong. And it got better as the podcast went on. But in the end, I was confused in the end. It didn't make sense to me. So I said, we need to talk about this, because I know that is something that a lot of people struggle with. And to start with, we're going to talk about how low his head is. And I know a lot of people don't like a horse carrying their head that low. And the simple truth is their conformation is what determines how high or low their head is. They're built like him. His neck comes out of his shoulders tight and low. He has a long top line to his neck, a shorter bottom line to his neck. Low's where he's comfortable. Low's where he wants it. And if I try to change that, I'm going to affect the balance throughout the rest of his body. If you don't like that, you want to get a horse that with its head comes out a little higher, that's fine. That's all conformation. You get the question a lot. I don't like that. I'm glad you don't teach the horses to carry their head low. I don't teach a horse to carry their head anywhere. I teach the horse to round their body. And when they round their body, they're going to carry their head where they're comfortable. And for him, that just happens to be where he's comfortable. See, Leo's making an appearance. His usual appearance, telling us what he thinks about all this. Us riding in his sandbox. So that's a little bit on why he carries his head so low. I'm sure later somebody that didn't see the beginning is going to tune in and ask the question. When you first get on him, he has his back round and he feels like he's about to buck you off. And that is what a truly collected horse feels like when you sit in the saddle. I had Qatar a while back, the English horse that came from Spain. And as soon as I got on his back and I sat down, I felt his back round. And it was round. It felt like he was going to buck. He wasn't. That's not what he was thinking. But that's what a rounded back feels like. A lot of riders that are not used to that, they feel that it scares them and they kind of panic a little bit. That is actually him doing what he's supposed to do. As I'm walking him around, I'm using my legs to push him forward. My body is riding with his movement. He keeps wanting to look out that way. Let's change directions. My body is riding with his movement, pushing his back end forward. Just like your truck, the motor is in the back, steering's in the front. And I'm going to, with my body, I'm going to tell his back end to go forward. I'm not going to just sit here expecting him to pull me along. I'm going to move with his movement just like a dance. We move together. And so much of everything that builds throughout the whole horse's career is dependent on you moving with your horse. As we're moving, I'm putting a little bit of leg on, I'm putting a little spur on here and there. And a lot of people kind of struggle with touching them with spurs so much. They say if you put spurs on them, you're gonna desensitize them. That's not true. I can ride this horse with no spurs, and he's not gonna be dull, but he's not gonna round his body. My legs, my movement is what teaches him to lift his back and engage with his back end. Now he's a reining horse, straight NRHA reining horse, so that is kind of carried to more of an extreme than some other horses, because when I take my legs off, I want him to stop. You got any questions so far? Okay, a lot of good mornings. I appreciate everybody for joining in. Good morning. And so as I'm riding him forward and I have that contact, I have my legs on him, pushing him forward. And then when I want to stop, I'm going to take my legs off. My legs are the accelerator. When I take my legs off, I'm taking my foot off the accelerator. It's just that simple. Accelerate means go. Now, when I want to go faster, I'm not going to kick harder. I'm going to ride faster. Riding faster, that's me mashing the accelerator. Let's come on around where you can see a little bit better. Little tick. And I'm going to ride faster, ride into that trot. Now, I pushed him forward with my seat, used my legs, and you saw where his head went. His head went lower because his back came up and his hips engaged. Now, if you're used to seeing like an English horse, a dressage horse with their neck up, that's no different. The higher low doesn't mean anything. It's the breaking at the pole and softening in the middle. You'll occasionally see him get behind vertical. It's okay. I'm not concerned about it. It's not like when Ella was getting behind vertical, evading the bit. He's getting behind vertical, stretching his top line more. A horse that carries their head low is going to get behind vertical a lot easier than a horse that carries their neck high. Horse that carries their neck high, that pole has to rotate further to get behind the vertical than a horse that carries their head low. Just basic physics. Now let's walk. All of that off of my seat and stop. And you notice I'm soft with his face. I can pull on him, and I can pull his head this way, and I can pull his head that way. But none of that, I haven't even talked about none of this being collection. This is collection back here. You have to get collection. You have to get frame here first. You get frame here first, back rounded, hips driving up underneath. That's your collection. And then this just takes care of itself. If the horse is pulling on you, you're gonna soften that up a little bit. We'll talk about how to soften in a minute. But everybody looks at this and thinks collection. That's not the important part of collection. This is the important part of collection. When he rounds his back, lifts his back, gets his hind end up underneath him, they usually stride up closer or maybe even overstride some, depending on how long back the horse is and how much they're rounding their back. Any questions yet? Nope. Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate everybody for joining. Yeah. I think everybody's got that weather on their mind. So let's go on. Let's talk a little bit about softness, how the softness builds into the collection. And then we're going to talk a little bit about why we need that softness, why we need that collection for the things that we're going to ask the horse to do. So as I'm walking him around, one key that a lot of people have a hard time grasping is you don't get a horse soft just by being soft. If I ride him soft and I never make contact, I never pull, I never do anything, the horse is not going to get soft. He's just going to stay what he is. What gets a horse soft is you pulling through his resistance, and when he gives, you release. He's going to figure out that to get that release, he has to give his head. Just as simple as pulling the rein to the side. So if I take this right rein and I pull it to the side, keep going forward, and I pull it to the side, I've got a soft horse. I'm going to release. If he would have pulled back against me, I'm going to hold that, maybe pull a little more, depending on what the horse does. And when he gets soft, I get soft. That's the key of getting a horse soft. When your horse gets soft, you have to get soft. You have to be firm, not necessarily hard, but you have to be firm enough to make the body part go the direction you're asking it to go in. And then when the horse does that, get soft, you have to get soft. That's what creates a soft horse. Now, a lot of people are familiar with this lateral flexation. You've seen it in colt starting videos for years. And when you ask the horse to bend, you release. Basic, get, bend, release. And that starts to build softness this way, laterally. And that's important, but to get past that, to keep building, you have to build this lateral softness into vertical softness, because as the horse flexes vertically, that loop breaks this back up. And I've done my bending counter bend exercise that works this. So as this horse advances, it becomes a more advanced horse. You saw what I was doing with my legs, picking his back up. I can pick, squeeze up my spurs, and I can round his neck this way. I picked my hands up because he was thinking laterally, and I rounded his neck off my legs. Now let's see if I can do it with just legs now. There we go. Oh, he's still thinking right. Let's straighten him up. Rounding his neck vertically off of my legs. Now he's pretty out of shape because he's been out in the pasture for a couple of years just being a horse. And because of that, if I do a lot of this, he will get back sore. It's kind of like us being unfit. We start going to the gym, we start working out. Oh, a little bit of left. We're going to get sore. And that's okay. A lot of people panic when their horse gets muscle sore. Muscle soreness is going to happen. Just like us, we start working out, we're going to get muscle sore. It's when you start getting into joint soreness that you really have an issue. You can kind of mitigate the muscle soreness by not doing too much at one time. Just like when you go to the gym, don't start off doing too much. Do a little bit and build, and your muscles won't get as sore. Anything?
How can we help a horse who built a little downhill around her collection?
Okay. How can you help a horse that's built downhill around their collection? That is going to be downhill means that it turns sideways. Downhill means that when you look at the withers and you look at the hip, the withers is lower and the hip is higher. That's a lot harder to build collection because the frame of the horse puts the horse on their front end. So what you have to do is get this back in even more underneath, get the hocks underneath, get this pelvis right here rotated. As you rotate the pelvis, that's going to lift the back, and that's going to help lift these shoulders that are downhill. When they're downhill, the horse is putting a lot of weight on the front end. So you're going to do that by asking the horse, let's walk forward, and I'm going to do a haunches in maneuver. So as we walk forward, I'm going to take my left leg back, push the haunches in, ask the leg to step underneath. That engages the hip, and ask it to step underneath. I'll come around and do that again. The key is getting the hips rotated, and you can create soreness back here too by doing this a lot. Shoulders out, hip under. Shoulders out, hip under. There we go. Get the haunches in, the horse stepping under. And with more practice, he would get better at that, which is something that he needs because he's weak back here. Let's do the other direction. So that's how you would help a horse that's downhill. And it's really hard to get a downhill horse to balance himself correctly off of their back end. There's several conformation flaws that's easier to work with. There's some of them that's harder to work with. That's one of the ones that's harder to work with. Again, right leg back, step the hip under. In is a little better that way. And then he steps under and I'll release. So downhill horse, you would need a lot of that, making this back end work really hard to help lift up the front end. And I've done a lot of videos on getting a horse off of their front end. A horse just naturally carries more weight on their front end because their necks stick out. There's more weight up there. But it's kind of like your car. You got a bunch of weight on the front, not much weight on the back, but you need a little help with your steering. That's what we're doing here. That's why you have power steering in your truck. That's why we're putting power steering in him. So let's do a little bit of some counter bending. I'm going to pick up my right rein, my right leg. I'm going to push his shoulders over to the left, bring his nose over to the right. That's lifting this right shoulder up. That brings this right front foot stepping across, and that brings this hip under. Do that again. And back forward again. With him being a futurity horse, they're trying to get the horse as far as they can to show in the futurity. And there's some things that they are not that concerned about when they're training the horse for the futurity because it's tools that they don't need. And that particular maneuver, he's had some of that, but that's not a tool that has been taught a lot to him because he has spent a lot of time being taught to keep getting your nose to the inside. So they're going to teach that a little bit different for futurity horses. I'm going to, while I have him, I'm going to fill in those holes of those things that were not taught to him being a futurity horse because they're tools that he's going to need later in life. When I'm loping him around in the arena, he always has his head to the inside. And the thing about a level 4 futurity trainer, they're going to have their pick of the best horses that's sent to them. And they might have 50 or 100 horses sent to them. And they're going to pick the best 6, 8, 10 out of that. And that's what they're going to train. They might take 40 and then throughout the 2 years, kind of cull them down to the couple they take to the futurity. And then the ones that don't make it just get sent home. That's kind of what happened to him. He couldn't handle being pushed too hard, too quick at the end of his 3-year-old year. And now I have to fill in those holes, basically complete his training as a weekend show horse instead of a futurity show horse. And that particular maneuver is one that he hasn't had a lot of. Ask him to round up, leg, 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 leg. And I feel like I'm sitting on a basketball up here. This back keeps getting higher and higher and higher. If his nose gets past vertical, I'm not worried about it. It's not that he's getting past vertical because he's evading the bit. He's getting past vertical because he's getting himself so round. That's not going to happen in just the course of going and riding the pattern. Any other questions to cover? Whoa. Yes. Somebody said they've had several dressage horses sent to them because they were forced into false collection and it shut down. That happens in the Western world a lot too, maybe even more than the English world. And what they do, instead of actually teaching the horse to collect from the body, all they're concerned about is the face. Nope, go forward. All they do, come on. all they're concerned about is bringing the face in. And they'll pull and hold and draw the horse's head in to get the face in. And it looks like collection, but it's not, because the back end does not engage in underneath. That happens a lot in the Western and the English world. And I get a lot of horses in that are kind of that way. And what happens a lot of in the Western world, in our world, you have some colt starters that start horses. Well, that start horses, and to make the horse look like it's further along than it really is, they just kind of hold the horse's head, and the horse gets off the bit. It looks like it's collected here, but it's not collected there. And in the Western world, you see that done with some colt starters, some horse flippers, and it's not really collection. Then you have to go back and work the body, and it's actually way harder to work the body after that. Um, I get several in here. I've had a Maverick, a Mustang I had a year or two, probably 2 years ago now. They were starting him, and they did so much lateral flexation from the ground, never had a rider on his back. And when you went to get on his back, all he would do was flex. He'd turn his head to his toe and then run off with you, because he had had so much flexion. You have to work the body. The body is what matters. And when you work the body, you get it right, all this will start to come into place. Now, just like I do the counter bend exercise, and you see me pushing with my leg, I'll get an action, a reaction from the head, but it's not because, nope, don't do that. It's not from the rein as it is as much from the leg. So let's show you that. Let's go forward. Now I'm going to put right leg on, and let's watch what his body does. He's looking at that horse. Let's get your attention away off of that horse. Right leg, right leg. See his head going that way? Because my leg is saying steer that way, his head's going that way off of this right leg. Whoa. The leg is pushing the shoulders over, and because the shoulders are going over, he's looking where it's going. His nose and his shoulders is connected together. That's I like to break that apart a little bit more for the benefit of more long-term horses, more long-term show horses. Futurity horses, you always want the head looking where the shoulders going. You don't break that loose quite as much. Anything else I need to talk about?
One person, they want to know what kind of bit you're using on them.
Okay, the bit on him is a low port. The port has kind of a triangle shape, just a little triangle. It's, I don't know, inch and a quarter, inch and a half. That's all there is to it. It's not broken in the middle, just that little triangle of a port. This today is actually the first day I've had this bit on him. Uh, Till then, I rode him with just my little port. It's just a port. It's probably inch and a quarter port. Um, NRHA Futurity horses are shown one-handed in the bridle. So I know he's been ridden one-handed a lot. He has been shown one-handed. He's watching Raven go by out there. I think Raven's on Gus. So I know that he's had a lot of bridle work. So that's what he's in today.
Curious about what you said about maybe overreaching depending on back length. I had assumed it was all in the hip and leg conformation. Can you expand on that?
So talking about overreaching depending on hip and back length. So it does have a lot to do with hip and leg length, but it also has a lot to do with the distance between the withers and the hip. And that distance, he can be long backed and he can be short backed. If he's got a really long back and he's only 12 hands tall, he's not going to have enough leg to really reach up to get to an overreach. So the back length has a lot to do with it, because you're looking at front legs and back legs, and how far apart the points of the shoulders are have a lot to do with the back length of the back. The other thing that has a lot to do with how far apart the front and the back legs are is the slope of the croup right here, and where the hips tie in uh, to the back, because you can have a hips that tie in with the hips out, which a lot of thoroughbreds are kind of, their hips are rotated out just a little bit. Most cow horses, their hips are rotated in just a little bit. That's how the hips right here are tied into the back of the spine, and then the angle of the croup has a lot to do with it. And people will pick apart a horse's conformation, and you can say, oh, I want this horse, he has a perfect conformation. But if that horse doesn't have a mind that's willing to give you what you ask for, that's just a waste of perfect conformation. I want a horse that has a mind that's willing to do what I ask, willing to give me what I ask for. And then I look at the body and decide, can I live with those conformation flaws? I really don't expect a horse to have a perfect conformation. Some of the best show horses I've ever shown did not have a perfect conformation, but they had the mind that they were going to give me everything that I asked for. That is way more important than a perfect conformation. Now, if you're spending $200,000 on a yearling and you're going to put him in training and you're going to spend another $100,000 on training, yeah, you're going to set yourself up for the mind and the body. It's going to give you the best chance of the return on your money. But most of us don't live in that world. Most of us are living in a world of what we can afford. And those conformation flaws is what knocks the price of the horse down. And some what's considered conformation flaws really don't affect the performance of the horse. In the horses that I've looked for, I just had this conversation with somebody, sent me a video of a horse. And they said, what's going on with his back end? He's moving odd in the back end. And basically what was happening is he was using his hocks and stifles a lot. He had a lot of action in his stifles, bringing his legs up. Pretty flat down below, but he had a lot of movement there. And that is actually what's considered a conformation flaw when you look at movement that I like. Because when that horse has that much movement in his back end, the chance that he's going to end up sore in his back end doing the kind of things that I do is way, way less. Now you start showing that horse in halter and some other things, it's not going to be as beneficial to the horse. But that kind of lots of movement in the stifles, I want. That's going to mean that means to me that the stifles are not going to get sore, hocks are not going to get sore when I'm working on stops. So you have to kind of figure out what conformation flaws a horse might have that really matter. And if people so picky on picking out perfect conformation, and perfect conformation don't matter if you don't have the mind and the heart to give you what you ask for. Anything else?
Colleen says, I'm a beginner dressage student, so pretty basic question. How far back does one leg need to be to engage the back end?
Okay, so she's asking how far back does the leg need to be to engage the back end? That's going to vary a lot depending on the horse, the progress of the horse, and the progress of your riding. If you're an upper level rider and you have an upper level horse, you're going to bring those cues in a little bit closer. That's going to be less leg movement, and that's going to help your dressage scores. Lower level rider, lower level horse, you're going to be a little bit more black and white here, here, and here, so that you can separate those cues out for your body and separate them out for your horse. Because a beginner level horse or beginner level rider is not going to be able to apply the exact same cue in the exact same spot every time. You might, instead of putting it in a cue in a spot this big, you might put a cue in a spot that big. Well, if your area that you're cueing the horse is that big, you've got to spread that apart. But as you become a better rider, that area is going to become slower or smaller, and as it becomes smaller, you can bring that in closer. With him, just a little while ago when I asked him to engage his hip, I slid my leg pretty far back because when I put it on the first time, he really didn't move it very good. So I slid my leg back, rubbed it a little bit, got his attention. Now, the next time I ask him, I probably don't have to get as far back. So that's going to vary. The answer to your question, that's going to vary a lot depending on your horse and your level of riding. Walk him around just a little bit. And we're going to talk about why we need a horse collected. Why do we need his back end up underneath? Why do we need his shoulders round? Why do we need him soft in our hands? If you're trail riding a horse, it's not going to matter as much. But if you have a horse that's really bad disengaged in his back end, really heavy on his front end, that puts more weight on his front feet. He's going to be more prone to getting injuries, more prone to getting sore, and he's just not going to be as healthy, potentially live as long a life if he's not carrying his back end up underneath him and lighter on his front end. A horse that is round in the back is a better balanced horse, and I believe a better healthy horse. I've been involved with several horses with kissing spine. Every horse that came with kissing spine carried themselves real inverted. Now, I have not seen any studies that specifically say, yes, a horse carrying himself inverted has contributed to the kissing spine. But from what I've seen, I thoroughly believe that. Because if you have a spine that's inverted, the top of the vertebrae are going to be closer together. That's just kind of the nature of the skeleton of the horse. So I think a horse that's not engaged is going to be more prone to back issues. It's just like you. If you're go to lift something, I mean, they tell us lift with your legs, don't lift with your back. Well, if your horse is inverted, not using his hips good, he's lifting with his back. He's doing all this work with his back. He's not doing it with his legs. And when he's round and collected, he's able to do the job with his legs, and his back's not sustaining as much work. So let's ask him to spin a little bit. He's a reining horse, so that's the maneuver that we're going to do. Different type of horse, you might do a different maneuver, but it's similar. I'm going to ask his front end to step around. As the front end steps around, it has to be free, it has to be loose, it has to step. The back end has to be underneath him. The back end has to be supporting his weight. If it's not, if he falls on his front end, then the front end's not going to travel as good. The back end's going to travel more. So let's just step into a spin. Whoa. Pretty decent. You saw the front end stepping around. That front end is not going to step around if there's weight on it. He was balanced pretty good on his back foot. Can't really see, but I think his back foot stayed in a pretty small area. You generally want him to balance on the inside foot, and that foot stay in a small area. And when it's not, if they're on the outside foot or if that area is big, that all contributes to the balance, and that contributes to the quality of the maneuver. No matter what you're doing, it's the same thing. Let's talk about jumping horses. I used to work a lot of jumping horses. I still get a few in once in a while. And it's just as much, maybe even more important, that horse carries himself good, uses his back end good to push himself up, to push himself over the jump. Be soft on his front end to get the front end up. If that horse goes over a jump inverted, it's almost always going to knock a pole with the front foot. That's just the nature of how it works. If the horse goes over a jump inverted, lands on his front end inverted, he's going to start with front end problems and back problems. Jumping horse really needs to be engaged in the back end, using his back end well. If he's not, he's going to have some issues. No other questions to cover? Y'all are quiet today. Yeah, last week there was a bunch of questions.
My 6-year-old mare just got diagnosed with severe Have you seen good results on surgery?
A 6-year-old mare just diagnosed with kissing spine. Have I seen good results with surgery? Um, I have seen good results with surgery, but you have to take each one with a case by case business basis, because kissing spine is not just a one fits all kind of thing. That means two vertebrae in the back are rubbing against each other, and you have to look at where it's rubbing, and is it something that has a good prognosis of being fixed with how it's rubbing. And the other part of that is physical therapy afterwards is vitally important. Rounding the back, strengthening them back muscles, because many times, I would say most times, when you have a horse with kissing spine, you have a weak back. And um, just like anything else, physical therapy is going to be really important to strengthen the muscles to hold them vertebrae where they go. So I have seen really good results with surgery. I've heard of some cases that the horse didn't recover to be rideable, but I think the difference is in the physical therapy after. Physical therapy is vitally important, just like physical therapy after PT or EPM is vitally important. And I get a lot of horses here to do that type of physical therapy with. Um, I don't think physical therapy, as we think of in people, that is advanced really far. Just about anything you go to the doctor for, this thing hurts, first thing they're going to recommend is physical therapy. And that it's not there with horses yet. You don't hear too much about it, but I get a lot of horses in with an ailment in different places. I had one horse in that wasn't traveling right. Um, Originally, the horse came in because he wouldn't pick up a lead, and ended up doing some research. It was like a halter horse, very muscular horse, and it had a pinched nerve in the shoulder right here. And through MagnaWave, several different types of therapy, some chiropractor, some exercise, actually helped the horse relieve the pain in the nerve, and the horse went home fine. And a lot of that kind of work you need physical therapy for, and not enough vets are really versed in the physical therapy part like human doctors are. Horse I had with EPM not too long ago needed the physical therapy to help build that strength. That one was in the back left leg, I think it was. Might have been back right, I don't remember. Really needed physical therapy to help build that strength, and that vet was really reluctant to say yes, go do the therapy. I've worked with Auburn a lot with EPM horses, and that physical therapy is vitally important for things like EPM and things like kissing spine. Anything else?
There's several just came in
Yeah,
all of a sudden. Um, Dusty says, along with conformation and brain, talk about athletic ability and what events your horses can take part in as how they will perform.
great. Dusty's asking, along with confirmation and brain, talk about athletic ability and what the horse is going to do. I had a horse in several years ago, and practically perfect confirmation, really good, and a mind that would kind of work a little bit. He came to me at one point because he kept laying down with his owner to get the owner to get off and stop. So I didn't have a real great mind to work with, and but the horse was athletic. There was the kind of horse that could get me off anytime he wanted to. He generally didn't want to because he didn't have a mind to work that hard. But you have to put all that together. Um, I've had several horses like Hank that I showed him working cow horse. His conformation wasn't perfect. He had a right club foot pretty bad, but he really wanted to carry his body pretty good when he wasn't running off with me. And but his mind was always on work. He was very athletic. The problem I had with him is that he knew he was athletic, and he really wasn't concerned about going into a maneuver correct because he knew he had the athletic ability to fix it. The good thing about horses like that, when I was showing him and working cow horse, we could kind of get out of whack a little bit, say on a fence turn on the cow, and he was athletic enough to pull himself out of it. And one show we practically went down. He slipped, just about went down, and he was so athletic he could pull him. So he pulled himself up and stayed with the cow. So athletic ability is huge, and that's you have to have all those parts to have a high level horse. And if um, you can't just rely on one or the other. It's all important, and it's all important for taking a horse to a level. It might be a higher level, it might be a lower level. It's whatever level you want to show that horse to.
Can you explain the difference between a 360 pivot on the rear spin? Spin looks more forward.
Okay, to explain the difference between a spin and a pivot. So there's several different maneuvers for several different events. If you're showing reining, you're going to spin like what I just did. If you're showing cow horse, you're basically going to back into it, and it's going to be more of a backwards movement. A pivot is going to be, it should still generally be forward because your inside foot should be still and the outside foot should be stepping forward. It still should be a forward movement, but it's going to be a much slower movement. It's going to look more like this. Still forward. He's still stepping in front with the front feet. The back foot is still stepping in front, but it's just going to be a pivot. And the biggest difference is where the back end being engaged. In a spin, it's the back end that really pushes the front end around. He's stepping in the front, but the back end is really pushing. And when you take and you keep engaging that back end, engaging, then you've brought a pivot into a spin, because that's really the only difference is how much the back end is engaged. Now, cow horse turn, you're going to back into that turn. I'm not going to do that with him because that's a big negative with a reining horse. But the way that would work is if I wanted to go this way, I'm going to back him up, create a backwards movement, and the what would be the outside foot would plant and the inside foot would step behind and the front foot would step behind. So just a different kind of maneuver for a different event.
Speaking of the horses just a little downhill, what is the best way to get them back on their hind end so they are not falling on their face?
Okay, so a horse that's built downhill, what's the best way to get them back on their hind end so they're not falling on their face? It's going to be lifting the shoulders, engaging the hip. There's going to be a lot of counter bending, a lot of getting the shoulders around. And Raven's working Gus out there. Getting the shoulders around, lifting the shoulders. And you have to put a lot of emphasis on lifting these shoulders. As you lift the shoulders, the back end is going to start coming underneath. A downhill horse, and really any horse that's heavy on the front end, it's all about lifting the shoulders.
Can you talk about a short back horse versus long back for collection?
Okay, so a short backed horse versus a long backed horse for collection. I did a clinic in England last year and saw probably the longest backed horse I think I've ever seen in my life. And it was amazing to watch this horse work. I think you just about could have put two saddles on him. I think that'd have been enough room. But he got his hind end up underneath him, and he's an older horse. I think he's in his upper 20s, I believe. He got his back end up underneath him, and he would collect himself and do the maneuvers. It was amazing to watch. A longer backed horse, because there's more distance between the withers and the hip here, the longer that distance is, the harder it is for the horse to get his hips underneath and lift his front end. You have a shorter backed horse, you're making that shorter, you're making it closer. It's a lot easier for that horse to lift his front end up. Basic lever, basic teeter totter. So shorter backed horses are typically a lot easier. And that's why you see so many cutting horses are so small and so short back, because when they get down low and they have their back end up underneath them, all of their weight is on their back end as they're moving their front end back and forth. You almost never see a long back cutting horse because they just can't get enough weight on their back end and get their front end up to do the work. That's why cutting horses are just about always small and very short backed. Walk him around a little bit, he's getting a little bit sore. I mean, a little bit bored. So if you have any other questions, put them in the comments. We're probably going to wind this up here in just a minute. Again, this is Hammer. I said who he was in the beginning, but I haven't said anything about him on into the video. Very, very nice horse. He's here to kind of refit and get back in the show pen after a couple of years off to kind of get a fresh brain. Any more questions before we end it? Okay. So I think we're going to end right there. I know collection and softness seems like this mystical beast that a lot of people have a hard time grasping. It's all about the body. It's all about getting the body round. And I would say, I wouldn't say just forget about what the front's doing. The front is not as important as the body. So many people talk about the front, and that's how you get false collection. Horse breaks at the pole, looks like he's collected up here, but the back end is not engaged. So if you have any other questions, put it in the comments or send me a message. I'll be happy to answer your questions for you. Until next time, thank you for watching.